Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com, on Roku, Dwyer Boxing, and Sports News. Well, the Ted Wells report on Deflategate involving the Patriots is a blockbuster. It's worse than I thought it would be. It contains, in my opinion, a smoking gun. If you're a gambler, you need to fade the Patriots next year. This team's not going to win the Super Bowl. This team is going to have problems. I'm expecting Tom Brady to be suspended for several weeks. There are two Patriot employees, right? One is a part-time employee who's been a Patriot employee for 32 years. We'll call him M, right? Then you have an equipment assistant who's also a Patriot employee. We'll call him J. What Ted Wells and his crew uncovered were a series of text messages between M and J discussing Tom Brady's complaints after a game against the Jets about the inflation of the footballs. Right? Apparently, these text messages between M and J talk about Brady's concerns. And then M, who apparently referred to himself as the Deflator, talks about wanting cash, right? Cash to take action. Jay then talks about giving M a needle. Folks, I'm not making this up, right? These emails are big. They're huge. Understand the Patriots played in some very dicey games late in the regular season and in the postseason. Understand the Indianapolis Colts tipped off the league to their concerns before the biggest game played in the AFC last year, the AFC Championship game. Understand that the footballs, 11 of 12, right, came in below league guidelines. Accordingly, the Patriots, right, given this evidence, given the conclusion that they deflated footballs to below league standards, cheated, let's use the word, cheated in the first half of last year's AFC Championship game, right? It's huge. It's so bad that apparently either M or J took the footballs into the bathroom for over a minute before the games. The referee for the game was a 19-year NFL employee. This is the first time in that referee's 19 years that balls were missing. He couldn't find the balls at the beginning of the game. Right? First time in 19 years. Now let me just say, given the political climate, the fact that Goodell has given some very stiff penalties to some NFL players, right, for things ranging from domestic violence to using a switch on a child, right? These guys are getting several games for off-the-field activities. One can only imagine the level of the penalty for actually participating in cheating during an actual NFL playoff game. Right? And so, in my opinion, Tom Brady is going to be suspended at least several weeks. At least. What I want people to do is to go back and look at the suspensions handed down in Bountygate against Sean Payton, the head coach of the Saints, and against the defensive coordinator. Right? There's no evidence there that Sean Payton was the person who authorized bounties. None whatsoever. Payton was suspended a year at a time when he was one of the league's elite coaches. Right? The defensive coordinator wasn't so lucky. Right? He actually received a lifetime ban, then had to reapply for reinstatement. Here you're talking about a situation where this team, right, cheated in a playoff game. Not only that, but understand the conversation concerning the inflation of the footballs, the text messages that the Ted Wells report uncovered took place during the regular season. I believe it's a reasonable assumption to believe that the Patriots may have been doing this in other games. Now, given that Roger Goodell is very good friends with the owner of the Patriots, Bob Kraft, and given the lingering suspicions over Spygate, right, the fact that some NFL luminaries involved in that Super Bowl, guys who work for NFL Network, Marshall Faulk and Kurt Warner, both still have their doubts about whether the Patriots cheated in that Super Bowl. Right? I believe Goodell is going to have to come down very hard on Tom Brady. This Wells report exonerates Belichick. It exonerates Bob Kraft. Right? I believe those guys are okay. But the report goes out of its way to point out that Brady likely knew of the deflation of the footballs. Understand, we know Tom is aware of the inflation of the footballs because he's the person who complained to M&J about the inflation of the footballs after the Jet game. In other words, it was an issue with Tom. Right? So clearly, if Tom then is getting underinflated balls, right, balls at less than 12.5 psi, there has to come a time where Brady would realize that the balls are indeed underinflated. Right? So I believe Brady is going to get hit hard. I believe that's going to open up a can of worms for gamblers with the Patriots. What I want you to do is to go back and I want you to look at Joe Montana's injury. Montana was a great quarterback just like Tom Brady, arguably the standard at the position. I want you to go back and look at Joe Montana's injury, Steve Young's ascendancy, the disarray that left the 49ers in when Montana then came back and the team wouldn't appoint him the starter, right? The press was involved. Montana ends up getting traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. Right? My point to you is if Tom Brady is suspended 4 weeks, 8 weeks, and if his backup comes in, good-looking kid, young guy, and if his backup starts to do well, I'm just here to tell you that's going to throw the team in disarray. Someone is going to start to notice Tom Brady's big cap number. Right? People are going to start to make arguments about how Brady's in his 30s. And sooner or later, the team is going to have to pass the torch. Isn't this the right time to do so? Right? Let me just say this too. If Brady fights a suspension, if the union, football's unionized, gets behind Brady to fight the suspension, and if Tom Brady has some games that are just off games, every quarterback has them. Right? You and I know that people are going to start asking themselves, hey, is this Tom Brady with standardized footballs the great Tom Brady? How long was he using deflated footballs? I'm telling you, every press conference involving Tom Brady is then going to start having questions about his appeal of this suspension and about how long he's been using deflated footballs. Right now, it's tough enough to get back to the Super Bowl after you've won it and to actually win it. Right? We haven't had a back-to-back champion for quite some time. The Patriots themselves didn't win the Super Bowl again after their prior victory for several years. I believe it took them a decade to get back and win the Super Bowl. Right? Winning it's tough enough, as the Seattle Seahawks know. Right? And trying to repeat last year. You can have a great year and come up short. Now throw in this wrench. Sanctions against the team. The league investigator concluding that Tom Brady likely knew the balls were deflated illegally for the AFC Championship game. Other teams dropping dime on the Patriots. Right? The Colts alerting the league before the game. Clearly, there was a rumor going around that the Patriots were doing this. Think about other actions, right? Bill Belichick using legal maneuvers against the Baltimore Ravens that were so edgy. The league has changed the rules to prevent those maneuvers by people in the future. Right? Understand, Goodell and Troy Vincent, they're concerned about the integrity of the game. Can we all agree that right now the Patriots are on the edge? Well, this report firmly places them over the edge, right? Guys in emails referring to themselves as the deflator, asking for cash, right? Another Patriot employee saying, hey, I'll provide you with the needle. Right? Balls then missing right before the game. Then, of course, at halftime of the game. Something like 10 or 11 balls are underinflated. Understand, too, the argument for atmospheric pressure is a bunch of BS. Because Colt footballs were tested and none of them, right, were deflated like this. So, if you're a bettor, given that this team already will be without Darrelle Revis, without Shane Vereen, right, and given the specter of a suspension of Tom Brady, I believe this is a team who you, quite frankly, need to fade. I wouldn't put too much futures money on this team. Right? Understand, I know the division has 2 new head coaches. Right? Todd Bowles, Rex Ryan. Right? Understand, though, Rex Ryan has been a coach in the National Football League before. Understand, as Miami Dolphin fans know, that team is on the rise. Right? In my opinion, the Patriots can't afford to be without Tom Brady. Right? Garoppolo might be a great up-and-comer. He just doesn't have experience. If you're betting on the Patriots, aren't you really betting on Tom Brady? Are you betting on a quarterback who doesn't have much experience as a starter in the league? So, add it all up, this report is serious, It contains a smoking gun, literally. Patriot employees talking about Tom Brady's complaints about the inflation of the football. And then talking about using a needle. One guy refers to himself as a deflator. Right? That's much more evidence than I thought this report would have. I think Roger Goodell needs to take strong action here. I believe the person to suspend is the quarterback. Keep in mind, if you believe this report, well then Tom Brady's statements were less than candid to the press about not wanting anyone to tamper with footballs. Okay, I understand it's a plausible deniability setup, but why would Tom Brady talk to these two guys, the guys who handle the footballs, about his displeasure over the inflation of the footballs? Expect Tom Brady's head to roll. Expect problems in Patriot land. Just don't expect this team to win next year's Super Bowl. I believe you want to fade the Patriots. This report is more damning than I thought it would be. It has enough teeth to bite this team. Right? Expect repercussions. Expect it to impact the Patriots' wins and losses. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here in the comment section to this video. If there are other parts of this report that you feel are eye-opening, then I hope you discuss them here. Thanks for stopping by.